The email arrives at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. It is a meeting invite for a project you built, yet you aren't on the host list. You are being sidelined. In your chest, there is a physical spike of cortisol, a heat that rises up the neck. Your instinct is to walk into the SVP's office and demand clarity, to set a boundary, or perhaps to simply quit because this is the third time this year. But you don't. You swallow the heat. You type a polite reply asking if you should attend. Why? Because the tuition bill is due on the 15th. The mortgage just adjusted upward, and your lifestyle has expanded to match your paycheck exactly. This is the gilded cage. It is a state of high velocity but zero mobility. You are moving fast, earning well, but you cannot change lanes because you lack the liquidity to pause. This isn't just about budgeting. It is about the paralyzing friction of financial dependency that turns executives into hostages. We need to fundamentally re-architect how we view a high salary. In the corporate system, a salary is often treated as a reward. In reality, a salary without retained savings is merely a lease on your time. If you spend what you earn, you are essentially renting your own life month to month from your employer. The governing principle we are adopting today is liquidity is liberty. Wealth is not the coach bag or the second car. Wealth is the number of months you can survive without a paycheck. That timeline is your measure of freedom. When that timeline is short, weeks or days, you have zero leverage in a negotiation. When that timeline is long, 6 months, a year, 2 years, you possess agency. You stop negotiating for survival and start negotiating for value. The goal is to move from being a high-paid laborer to being the capital owner of your own career. Consider Elena. Elena is a director of operations earning $230,000 a year. On paper, she is the picture of success. She drives a leased luxury SUV, her children attend private school, and she vacations in Aspen. But last month, her CEO demanded she fire a key team member to cut costs, a decision Elena knew was strategic suicide and morally wrong. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to say, "If you do this, I cannot stay." But she looked at her bank balance. She had $4,000 in checking and $40,000 in credit card debt. She fired the team member. She went home, poured a glass of wine, and hated herself. This is the landmark moment where the lack of a freedom fund dictates your ethics. Elena's high income was irrelevant because her burn rate matched it. She had no walkaway number, and therefore, she had no voice. We are going to break the handcuffs. Before we get to the math, I need you to commit to the collective. This isn't about skipping coffee. It's about structural change. Join the Pathfind Her Collective if you are ready to build the infrastructure that lets you say no. Here is the first protocol, the 30-day bleed audit. I don't want you to look at what you think you spend. I want you to download your last 3 bank statements. Highlight every single recurring charge that is a lifestyle maintenance cost. Subscriptions, leases, services that simply keep the current machine running. Categorize them into structural, housing, food, utilities, and performative, status maintenance. We need to see exactly how much it costs to be you, so we can calculate how much it costs to free you. Let's look at the terrain of the gender economy. We spend a lot of energy discussing the pay gap, the roughly 82 cents on the dollar statistic. That is a flow problem. But the far more dangerous terrain is the gender wealth gap. That is a stock problem. Data shows that for every dollar of wealth a man owns, a woman owns roughly 32 cents. For women of color, it is pennies. Why? Because the corporate system is designed to interrupt women's compounding. We take career breaks for caregiving. We are funneled into safe operational roles rather than equity-heavy P&L roles. We live longer, requiring more funds for old age. The friction here is systemic. The system pays you enough to keep you working, but often not enough to let you stop. If we only focus on getting a raise, the pay gap, we miss the architecture of ownership, the wealth gap. A raise is taxed as income. A freedom fund is capital that buys you time. The compass setting here is shifting from amount to duration. Most people measure financial health by a static number. I want $1 million. That is abstract. The true compass is time. How long can you maintain your standard of living if the income stops today? This reframe changes the psychology of saving. You aren't saving for a rainy day. You are buying next October. When you view money as stored time, every dollar you don't spend on performative status becomes a minute of freedom you just purchased for your future self. It turns the deprivation of saving into the acquisition of liberty. We are building a redundant system for your life, ensuring that if the primary engine, your job, fails, the auxiliary power kicks in instantly. I sat in a compensation committee meeting last year. We were discussing 2 VPs, one male, one female. Both were high performers. The man negotiated hard for restricted stock units, RSUs, and equity. The woman negotiated hard for a higher base salary. She wanted the security of the monthly cash flow to cover her childcare and mortgage. He wanted the asset that would compound. 3 years later, the company was acquired. His equity payout was 7 figures. Her salary increases amounted to an extra $40,000 over 3 years. She had played for safety and lost the wealth game. He had played for leverage. This is a common landmark. We are often socialized to value the safety of the immediate paycheck over the volatility of wealth building. But in the long run, the paycheck is the risky bet because it relies entirely on your continued presence and health. Here is the tactical shift. If you are in a leadership role, your next negotiation must pivot to equity or deferred compensation. If you are not in a role that offers equity, you must manufacture it yourself. This means automating the extraction of wealth from your salary before it hits your checking account. The script for yourself is, I tax myself first. Set up an automatic transfer for the day after payday. It goes to a high-yield account that you do not see. Treat this transfer as a bill that is more important than the mortgage. It is the bill for your future autonomy. If you negotiate a raise, 100% of the net difference goes to the Freedom Fund. Do not absorb the raise into your lifestyle. That is lifestyle creep, and it is the enemy of the Freedom Fund. Let's talk about the specific terrain of toxic leadership. Toxicity thrives on dependency. A bullying manager, an unethical board, or a manipulative partner intuitively knows who can leave and who cannot. They can smell the leverage. When you are financially extended, you emit a frequency of fear. You hesitate to speak the hard truth. You accept the 10 p.m. calls. You tolerate the passive-aggressive comments in the strategy review. This friction wears down your psychological immune system. You start to believe you aren't good enough, when, in reality, you just aren't liquid enough. The terrain here is psychological warfare, where your bank balance is the primary weapon used against you. Without a freedom fund, you are bringing a knife to a gunfight. You are trying to use logic and HR policies against a system that relies on your economic necessity. The compass principle is, detachment is power. In any negotiation, the person who needs the deal the least has the most leverage. When you have a freedom fund, let's say 6 months of expenses sitting in a liquid account, your energy changes. You enter the room with a walk-away posture. You are not arrogant. You are simply secure. This detachment actually makes you better at your job. You can take calculated risks. You can advocate for the right strategy rather than the popular one. Ironically, by being ready to leave, you often become more valuable to the organization. You become the person who speaks the truth because you can afford the consequences. This is the paradox of the Freedom Fund. It often prevents you from having to use it. Let's look at Maya. Maya is a creative director. Her boss was stealing her work and presenting it to the client as his own. For 2 years, she took it. Then she spent a year aggressively building her Freedom Fund. She hit her number: 9 months of runway. The next time her boss interrupted her in a client pitch to claim credit, Maya didn't shrink. She paused, turned to him, and said clearly and professionally, "Actually, let me clarify the strategy behind that concept as I developed it." The room went silent. She took the floor back. She wasn't fired. In fact, the client noticed her authority. Her boss backed down because bullies retreat when they hit resistance. Maya didn't have to quit, but she was able to quit. And that ability gave her the steel to speak up. The Freedom Fund was the silent partner in that meeting. You need a behavioral protocol for when to use your leverage. We call this the red line list. Write down 3 specific behaviors or requests you will no longer tolerate. Examples: being spoken to with disrespect in front of peers, being asked to falsify data, or regularly working weekends without notice. Now, apply the if-then logic. If this happens, then I will assert the boundary immediately. Because you have the fund, you can say, "I cannot accommodate that request this weekend." Or, "We need to speak about the tone of this conversation." Practice these scripts in the mirror. It sounds silly, but your nervous system needs to rehearse the feeling of standing your ground. The Freedom Fund is the battery pack. The script is the software. You need both to execute. Now we must face the hard math. The terrain of the economy has shifted. The walkaway number you might have calculated in 2020 is obsolete. We are looking at sticky inflation, rising healthcare costs, and market volatility as we head toward 2026. A standard 3-month emergency fund is a relic of a more stable era. In the current job market, executive search cycles are lengthening. It can take 6 to 9 months to find a role at the director or VP level. If your fund only covers 3 months, you will be desperate by week 10. You will take a subpar job just to stop the bleeding, resetting your career trajectory downward. The risk here is not just running out of money. It is the degradation of your career capital because you were forced to sell your labor at a discount. We need to recalibrate. The Freedom Fund is not a retirement account. It is a bridge. A bridge gets you from one stable landmass, your current role, to a better one, your next evolution, without forcing you to swim through the shark-infested waters of desperation. The compass is risk-adjusted runway. You need to calculate your number based on the worst-case scenario, a recessionary job market and a family medical emergency occurring simultaneously. This sounds dark, but systems architecture is about redundancy. We build for the storm, not the sunny day. Your bridge needs to be strong enough to carry your full household burn rate for a minimum of 6 months, ideally 9. This is the price of sleeping well at night. Let's do the real-world math with Jasmine. Jasmine lives in Chicago, 2 kids, partner works freelance. Their monthly keep-the-lights-on burn rate is $12,000, mortgage, groceries, insurance, car. Jasmine thought she was safe with $30,000 in savings. That's 2.5 months. But in 2024, her industry faced layoffs. If she lost her job and it took 7 months to find a match, she would be $54,000 in the hole. That debt would crush her credit score and force her to pull from her 401k, triggering penalties and tax events. When we sat down, we adjusted her target. We aimed for $75,000. It seemed impossible, but by cutting the second car lease, canceling the expensive vacation, and consulting on the side, she built the bridge. When rumors of layoffs started, Jasmine wasn't updating her resume in a panic. She was planning her consulting business. The math changed her emotional reality. Here is your homework. Open a spreadsheet. Column A, fixed costs, mortgage, rent, utilities, insurance. Column B, variable essentials, groceries, gas, medical. Column C, the fat, dining out, streaming services, subscriptions. Sum A and B. Multiply that number by 6. That is your minimum viable freedom, MVF number. Multiply it by 9 for your target. Now, look at column C. Every dollar you cut from column C today gets moved to the fund. The script is, I am not denying myself a pleasure. I am buying a day of freedom. When you look at a $200 dinner, ask yourself, is this dinner worth 4 hours of my freedom? Sometimes the answer is yes. Usually, the answer is no. This cognitive reframe turns budgeting into a strategic game of buying back your life. There is a hidden terrain we must traverse: identity. For many high-achieving women, our spending is tied to our professional identity. The tailored suit, the specific car, the membership, these are signaling mechanisms. We signal that we belong in the C-suite. To cut back in order to build a freedom fund can feel like a loss of status. It feels like regression. This is the gilded cage locking from the inside. We are afraid that if we don't signal wealth, we won't be perceived as successful. But remember, the most successful person in the room is the one who doesn't need the room. Real status is autonomy. We have to decouple our self-worth from our consumption patterns. The friction is internal ego management. You have to be willing to look less than temporarily to become more than permanently. The compass setting is agency over appearance. We are shifting value from how things look to how things work. A heavily leveraged life looks good but works poorly. A liquid life might look simpler but works powerfully. This principle applies to your career choices too. Are you taking the role with the fancy title but the toxic culture? Or the role with the boring title but the high equity potential and flexibility? We choose the architecture that supports our agency. We prioritize the foundation over the facade. When you make a financial decision, ask, does this purchase increase my agency or my dependency? If it increases dependency, it is a liability, no matter how shiny it looks. I recall a conversation with a mentor, Catherine. We were walking to the car park after a high-stakes board meeting. The other executives were getting into brand new Porsches and Range Rovers. Catherine unlocked a 6-year-old Honda. I looked at her, surprised. She smiled and said, Chris, that car is why I could vote no on the merger today. They have payments. I have options. That moment crystallized it for me. Her beat-up Honda wasn't a sign of failure, it was a tank. It was the armor that allowed her to be the most powerful person in the boardroom. She didn't need the merger bonus to pay for her lifestyle. The others did. They were compromised. She was sovereign. That Honda was the most luxurious car in the lot because it ran on freedom fuel. You will face social friction. Friends will want to go to the expensive resort. Colleagues will suggest the high-end dinner. You need a social script that protects your fund without sounding like a victim. Do not say, I can't afford it. That frames you as powerless. Say, I'm reallocating capital toward a big project right now, so I'm keeping things lean this quarter. It sounds strategic. It sounds like you are building something, because you are. You are building your exit ramp. If they press, simply say, I'm focused on liquidity this year. In executive circles, liquidity is a power word. It signals sophistication. Use the language of finance to protect your boundaries. You aren't saving, you are consolidating capital. We are nearing the end of this map. The final terrain is execution. The knowledge of the Freedom Fund is useless without the mechanics of the build. The friction here is inertia. It is easier to listen to this podcast, nod your head, and do nothing. It is easier to wait for the right time to start saving. There is no right time. There is only time you have used and time you have wasted. The system relies on your inertia. Banks profit from your debt. Employers profit from your dependency. To break this, you must act with violent intent. You are not trying to save. You are executing a rescue mission for your future self. The compass is radical incrementalism. You do not need to find $50,000 tomorrow. You need to find system efficiency today. We build the fund brick by brick. It is about the aggression of the small. Selling the clothes you don't wear, renegotiating the insurance rate, diverting the tax refund. Every small act of reclamation adds to the pile. Consistency beats intensity. If you save $1,000 a month, in 5 years, you have $60,000 plus interest. That is a year of freedom. Is a year of your life worth the discipline of $1,000 a month? That is the trade. We focus on the trajectory, not the current position. If the trajectory is positive, you are winning. Visualize the landmark, your future exit interview. Not the one where you are pushed out, but the one where you resign on your terms. Imagine sitting across from the toxic manager or the rigid HR director. Imagine the feeling of handing over the letter, knowing your bank account is full. You aren't angry, you aren't crying, you are calm. You give honest feedback because you don't fear retaliation. You say, I'm moving on to a new opportunity that aligns with my values. You walk out of the building, the sun hits your face. You have 6 months to find the right thing, to rest, to be with your children. That moment, that specific feeling of lightness is what you are buying today. Keep that image on your desk. That is the landmark we are walking toward. Here's the final path. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight, you open the account. You name it Freedom Fund. You transfer the first amount, even if it is $50. You set the recurring transfer. Then, I want you to look at the map we've drawn. Which coordinate resonates most? Is it the Gilded Cage panic, the walkaway math, or the identity struggle? Go to the Pathfinder channel and tell me, Chris, I'm stuck in the cage, or Chris, I'm building the bridge. We need to know where you are to help you navigate. Peer navigation is how we survive. Share your coordinate. Start the transfer. Claim your agency. I'll see you on the path.